At least 16 inmates in a central and Mexican prison were killed and 5 more were wounded in a riot that closed out at a violent 2019 for the country. In fact, the state prison broke out the riot there around 14:30 or 2:30 local time on Tuesday, and the prison was brought under control by 5 p.m. 15 of the victims died at the prison and 1 died at the hospital. The state officials said authorities confiscated 4 guns that they believe were bought into during prison visits on Tuesday. The prison had been searched for weapons on Saturday and Sunday, but no guns were found. 1 prisoner was detained with a gun still in his possession, and the other 3 were found inside the prison. Officials said that not all of the victims died from gunshot wounds. Some were stabbed and others beaten with objects. Flash floods had inundated large parts of Indonesia's capital and nearby towns on the first day of the new year after torrential rainfall overnight, killing at least 9 people and forcing thousands of people to evacuate. Jakarta is home to 10 million people, or 30 million including those in its greater metropolitan area. It's prone to earthquakes and flooding, and it's rapidly sinking due to uncontrolled extraction of groundwater. Syrian government forces shelled a rebel-held village in the country's northwest on Wednesday, hitting a school and killing at least 6 people. The attacks in the Idlib province, the last rebel stronghold Syria, is part of an ongoing offensive in which Syrian troops have captured more than 40 villages and hamlets over the past 2 weeks. The UN has warned of the growing risk of a humanitarian catastrophe in the region, which lies along the Turkish border. A war, monitoring group, the Britain-based Syria Observatory for Human Rights, said that a teacher and 4 students were killed in Sunday's government shelling of the village. Hadi Abdullah, an Idlib-based opposition activist, gave a slightly higher death toll, saying 7 people were killed, including a woman and 4 children. Witnesses in Sarmin said that 8 or 9 people died. A fire at a zoo in western Germany killed a large number of animals in the early hours of the new year. The Krefeld Zoo near the Dutch border said the entire ape house burned down and all the animals inside are dead. Authorities did not comment on local media reports that the fire was started by fireworks. California authorities have confirmed a man died after he chased down a suspect who stole his laptop computer at a Starbucks in an East Oakland neighborhood. The man, believed to be in his 20s or 30s, died of head injuries and after being taken by ambulance to the hospital. His identity was not immediately released. The customer was working on his computer Tuesday morning when a suspect snatched the device and ran. Suspect then drove off in a nearby vehicle. It was unclear if there was a driver waiting in the vehicle. Before the car drove off, witnesses said the customer grabbed a door handle, causing him to slam his head into a parked car when the vehicle had in fact accelerated away. Authorities did not immediately confirm the witness account. Pope Francis had to pull himself away from a woman in a crowd in St. Peter's Square after she had grabbed his hand and yanked him towards her. Pope Francis was walking through the square and greeting pilgrims on his way to see the large nativity scene set up in the huge cobbled area. The abrupt gesture, in fact, appeared to cause him pain, and Francis swiftly wrenched his hand free. The woman has made the sign of the cross as the Pope had approached. It was not clear what she was saying as she was tugging him towards her. Thousands of people marched through the center of Gaza City to mark the 55th anniversary of the Palestinian Revolution and nationalist political movement. In fact, the protesters marched with yellow flags and chanted slogans in support of the group. A rally was held in the center of Gaza City, where the stage was set for speeches and an event as well as a ceremonial torch to be lit. Dozens of demonstrators were arrested as Hong Kong's anti-government protests spiraled into the chaotic scenes on New Year's Day. Protesters in the Causeway Bay district were detained by riot police. They took to the streets amid efforts to press authorities for further concessions in the Chinese-ruled city. Earlier in the day, police fired tear gas and water cannons at crowds of protesters who had gathered for a largely peaceful march, including families. Hong Kong has been embroiled in more than 6 months of anti-government protest that has now spilled into 2020, with protesters demanding including full democracy and an independent inquiry into allegations of police brutality. Iran-backed militiamen and other protesters gathered outside the American embassy. They began to disperse on Wednesday after U.S. troops fired tear gas. Protesters threw stones at the building and set fire to the roof of a reception area inside the embassy compound and burned tires. Dozens of Iran-allied militiamen and their supporters had camped out at the gates of the embassy overnight, a day after they broke into the compound, trashing a reception area and smashing windows before pulling back. It was one of the worst attacks on a U.S. diplomatic mission in years. The protesters lit a fire on the roof of the reception area. Smoke rose from the building. There has been no reports of any injuries so far. The protests began and the militiamen were in fact protesting deadly U.S. airstrikes that targeted an Iran-backed militia over the weekend, killing 25 fighters. U.S. troops from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division out of the Fort Bragg, in fact, North Carolina, there has begun to deploy to the Mideast amid a rise in tensions between the U.S. and Iran, and Tuesday's attack on the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad by Iran-supported militiamen. Defense Secretary Mark Esper announced that in response to recent events in Iraq and at Trump's direction, he authorized the immediate deployment of an infantry battalion of about 750 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East. He did not specify their destination, but a U.S. official familiar with the decision said they will go to Kuwait. In fact, 750 soldiers deployed immediately are in addition to 14,000 U.S. troops who have deployed to the Gulf since the May in response to concerns about Iranian aggression, including its alleged sabotage of commercial shipping in the Persian Gulf. The video showed a truck swing wildly in high winds while driving along Interstate 25 in Colorado on Wednesday. Parts of Colorado and Wyoming started the new year with extreme weather, with winds up to 70 miles per hour, causing the highway to be shut down near the border between the two states. Wyoming Highway Patrol reported overturned vehicles, including at least one truck, and other pushed off the road. The U.S. National Weather Service warned strong winds and blowing snow could make travel difficult with the higher mountain passes in Colorado, just as heavy post-holiday traffic is expected to pick up. Colombia's capital city inaugurated its first female mayor in what is being hailed as an important advancement for both women and LGBT rights. Claudia Lopez chose to be inaugurated at the popular Simon Bolivar Park in the center of Bogota. She also arrived for the ceremony riding a bicycle in the company of her wife, Senator Angelica Lozanzo, and members of her cabinet. Claudia Lopez won the race for mayor of Bogota on a platform promising to combat corruption, advance equal rights for minority communities. Lopez also becomes the first openly lesbian mayor of a capital city in Latin America, a region which is slowly advancing in improving LGBT rights, but where long-standing cultural biases and inequality remain barriers. Lopez said in electing her, Bogota voted to defeat racism, classism, homophobia and xenophobia. Marching bands from the US, cheerleaders from Croatia, jugglers and Italian folk bands paraded through the streets of Rome on Wednesday to celebrate the first day of 2020. Thousands of people gathered through the main streets of the Italian capital to watch the coloured and joyful show. 30 different bands paraded along with the cheerleaders dressed in brightly uniforms to wish everyone a good year. Dozens of students from Illinois, Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, Wisconsin and New Jersey crossed the ocean to take part. Marching bands and floral floats took to the streets under mostly sunny California skies as the 131st Rose Parade drew hundreds of thousands of spectators on New Year's Day. Annual extravaganza on Wednesday featured dozens of floats decked out with countless flowers and waving celebrities. It has rained only once in the Rose Parade in the past 6 decades. That was in 2006, and it has never been cancelled because of weather. A theme of the 2020 parade was a power of hope. Police said there was no known threats in the parade and spectators' safety would remain in the first priority and security would be tight. No major problems were reported.
Between 750 million people on the streets that she is able to
a lot of people, about 1 million down that Colorado Boulevard.
And you know, we have
rolled oats, ground nutmeg, and cinnamon. And you have lettuce seed and black Plymouth Rock, its granite-like look. Dressed in authentic 17th century pilgrim attire. Each individual riding the float is
Revelers packed beaches from Waikiki to the Big Island as Hawaiians, visitors and transplants to the island prepare to ring in the new decade. A strong winter swell brought heavy waves to north and west-facing shores of the island Tuesday early. In fact, they were triggering the iconic Bay Big Wave contest named after Hawaiian surfing legend Eddie Aikau. Waves were not quite big enough for the green light on the North Shore surfing competition, but waters across the archipelago saw above-average sets of rollers that some surfers took full advantage of. On Ohio, in fact, people packed the streets of Waikiki, where a fireworks display would welcome 2020. Fireworks display, both big and small, were expected across the islands as the sanctioned shows competed with the island's less legal versions of the explosive festivities in neighborhoods. Thousands of Dutch revelers braved cold water and chilling winds to take a New Year's Day plunge in the North Sea. The crowd jumped into the sea as part of a tradition thought to date back to 1960s. Nowadays, the event is now held as a charity fundraiser. With each summer, swimmer is required to, in fact, buy a ticket. It resisted a water temperature of 7 degrees Celsius and an outside air temperature of 3 degrees Celsius. More than 60,000 people were expected to take part in similar events on 24 locations across the Netherlands. Emirate of Ras Al Khaimah set 2 Guinness World Records for fireworks displays and on January 1st. One for the most unmanned aerial vehicles for launching fireworks simultaneously and the second for the longest fireworks waterfall. A 2020 New Year's gala included 13 minutes of fireworks display using 173 drones simultaneously. Second title for the longest fireworks waterfall spanned a length of nearly 3,800 meters, beating a previous record held in Japan.